This is also another really, really important point when we're thinking about how do we adjust our energy requirements for our underconditioned patients. And what I want to draw everyone's eyes to start with is I think we're really familiar with these kind of classic equations. They're pounded into our head in vet school. They're cited in a lot of literature. They are our bread and butter for how do we determine caloric intake. And then I think we're really familiar with all of these life stage factors too, right? So intact versus neutered, and then growth, weight loss, all of that. But what we don't talk about a lot is this bottom one for malabsorptive disease. So you can see that there's at a minimum a 1.8 times increase that you need to have for that life stage factor. It's really a disease factor, but that's just the bottom. That's the floor, essentially. So how do we determine what disease or life stage factor that pet in front of us has? So this article that came out in JSAP a couple years ago by Katie Tolbert and some other nutritionists is really excellent. It talks about using your BCS to help you increase your caloric requirements. You can see here with every point under ideal for the BCS, you would multiply by an additional percentage of 10, if you will. So a BCS of 3 out of 9, if we're saying that that's 2 points under ideal. If we're saying ideal is 5 out of 9, you would essentially increase by a factor of 20%, whereas if it's 2 out of 9, you increase by 30%, and so on and so forth. So then you use that body weight to plug into these calculations. So that's really, really, really important because these patients are in a catabolic state. And I myself sometimes, forget to emphasize that to our residents, and I'm trying to get better at it routinely. But I think that's something we don't talk about a lot, and it's really important for the nutrition of that patient. Other things that I want to define before we get into the meat of the diets in this talk would be total dietary fiber, or TDF. So you're going to see me refer to TDF in this talk, and that denotes the total fiber in that diet. So both soluble, insoluble, and mixed. And then for the bulk of this talk, no pun intended, we will be talking mostly about soluble fibers for diarrhea, and I'll explain why. When I refer to a megacalorie, that refers to 1,000 calories / kilocalories. So nutritionists will commonly use this when they're talking about macronutrient amounts. So often it's referred to as X amount of grams of fat per megacal, X amount of grams of protein per megacal. So just so you know, when I use that term, that's what I'm referring to. And then food responsive enteropathy. I've probably already stated this without actually defining it, but FRE stands for essentially any diet, any disease process that responds to a diet. So we traditionally have thought of it as responsive to novel hydrolyzed elemental diets only, but again, that can be any chronic enteropathy that responds solely to a change in fiber, a change in fat levels, just a dietary change without needing other things like antibiotics or steroids.